Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's PAVE panel. We are going to get started very shortly. While we wait for folks to funnel in from the waiting room, I'll go over a couple of housekeeping items. As a reminder, you will be able to find the full recording of this panel as well as all of our previous virtual panels on our YouTube channel or on our website, pavecampaign.org. And I want to welcome you all to PAVE's 135th virtual panel and our first of 2026. Really excited for this conversation today. We always like to start out our virtual panel series every year with kind of a bang. And given all of the waves that Kodiak has been making in the AV trucking space, we thought it would be really fun to sit down with their leadership and talk about their journey and sort of the road ahead. So my name is Caitlin Magny Miller. I'm sure many of you know me. I'm PAVE's communications director, and I'll be moderating our conversation today. But I want to start by introducing our guest of the hour, Andy Wendel. He is the Chief Technology Officer at Kodiak.
Great, thanks a lot. Thanks for having me here.
So let's start with a quick intro. Tell us a little bit about yourself and Kodiak.
Yeah, I've been in autonomy more broadly for the last 15 years and started out with autonomy for unmanned aerial vehicles, drones, and then joined the Waymo team very early on, like when Waymo was less than 100 people. More on the perception side, my PhD is in computer vision, and I did a lot of robotics there as well. And yeah, after that, I was one of the founding engineers here at Kodiak. And so now over the last 8 years, we've of course grown the team a lot, grown the technology a lot. And in December of 2024, we got our first driverless trucks deployed in customers' hands, which we believe it was a industry first at the time. And then we've grown from there, of course, in the last year, going public as well and operating driverless vehicles on a daily basis. So it's exciting times.
Very cool. And cool to hear how you've been with Kodiak sort of since the beginning. I can imagine there have been a lot of changes since then. And of course, as you know better than anybody else, 2025 was a huge year for you guys. Can you talk about some of the milestones that you are most proud of?
Yeah, absolutely. Super happy to do so. In the beginning of 2025, in January, we had two trucks driving on roads in the Permian Basin in Texas without anyone in the cab. And I'll emphasize this in the beginning here, like this is there's literally no one in there. There's no safety observers. It is not an L2 system. It's a full L4 system. No one in the cab, transporting goods for our customers 24/7. And so in the beginning of the year, these vehicles, they pulled single trailers, so single trailers of sand. And it was, frankly, was a lot of work to monitor them, to watch out for them, to make sure that everything works the right way for our customers. And over the year now, we have scaled this at the end of the third quarter, which is the latest numbers that we have now released. We have scaled this to 10 trucks. And of course, we continued this scaling journey since then. And this is super exciting in terms of the technology. At that time in January, I was watching these trucks quite a bit just to stay informed of what's happening. At this point, I don't have to anymore, right? So you can actually see how the technology matures, but especially the product behind it matures. And I think that's the biggest part there. We went from pulling single trailers to double trailers during 2025. We went from we changed our uptime considerably, right? These are all learnings that you have out in the field where you learn about how to commercialize this, how to do it right for your customer, and how to actually build a product, not just technology. And of course, that got us in September of 2025, it got us to a point where we went public. We're now a publicly traded company on the NASDAQ with the KDK ticker. And that, of course, was a super exciting moment, but it's only the start of this next phase of commercialization.
Yeah, you've really teed up our next topic well, which is scaling. Obviously, that's been a major focus for you as you expand your operations and your technology. I'm wondering if you can talk about sort of the biggest challenges that you face at this stage of growth, and also what do you think you need to do this year to extend your driverless deployments from maybe the industrial use case to the long haul trucking side of things?
Yeah, so the I would say on the technology side, if you have more trucks, then also you have more to do in terms of uptime. So if you would have a product that is not super reliable, then you have your hands full of doing that. So oftentimes people talk about the physical AI aspect, which we're working on every single day. We have a really good AI that drives. So that's kind of the human driver for maybe not everyone is equally informed on the topic. So the we try to do what the driver does, right? Oftentimes people say like, oh, it's about autonomous vehicles, but it's really about autonomous drivers. So we all build in this industry, we build autonomous drivers that then drive vehicles, and the vehicles need to be equipped with certain technology to make that possible. And we do focus on this physical AI a lot. Now, that physical AI does get better every day. We run lots of simulations to make it better and then deploy it now in customers' hands. But it also needs to run on the right platforms. And one of the biggest challenges there is that none of the OEMs at the moment still has that platform ready to go and to hand over. So what Kodiak has done, and is very unique, is that we built our own vehicle agnostic platform integration, and that allows us now to go and run on various different platforms. And we see that that's actually something that customers want. They want the right vehicle to do the job, and then the right driver to do the job, so AI driver on top of that. And that is something that we have used for ourselves to actually scale the right way, to combine those two parts. And that's not where the story ends, because that's kind of only the technology. And scaling in this case is it's not about the vehicle, it's not about the driver, it's about actually giving customers something that makes them more productive and that helps them on their daily basis. So tons of learnings from scaling at the moment, and getting people to understand where do you pull this very large vehicle sometimes, where exactly do you park it, right? How do you get it out of these areas? How do you do predictive maintenance so that the uptime is really high? All of these parts we're learning on a daily basis today. We, of course, get paid for all of these miles and these deployments. And that's something where I think we're leading in the industry. Now, how do we take this to highways was your second part of the question. Kodiak is now roughly 8 years old, and from the first couple of months, we started deploying on highways. So we've been working on highways for quite some time, and our deployment in the Permian Basin is a huge enabler for this. So we get to see a lot of the things and see that in a daily basis that helps us with our safety case, helps us with our deployment on highways. So we're working on a daily basis on deploying this for highways as well. This is where we're still working on that safety case and making really good progress.
Really interesting. And sort of a bigger picture question here, as you move towards broader, longer haul deployments, how do you define readiness? What are the key, really technical or operational signals that tell your system that it's truly ready to scale?
Yeah, this is the major question for all of autonomy, right? Is like, when is it ready and how do you do that? And it's often neglected. So, and I don't mean that in terms of the companies neglected. It's neglected in kind of the view of what is needed to run this. Oftentimes people look at one demo and they're like, well, it seems to work. But behind all of this stands a huge verification and validation program that shows that, yeah, one ride is good, but then also the next one and the next one is good. And especially it is safe in terms of a comparison to a human driver. So human drivers also have accidents, but they're actually, well, oftentimes we look at these and say like, well, they're they're kind of frequent in aggregate. Humans drivers are actually really good in how they drive on a highway, and it is very hard to meet that bar. So there's a lot of work that goes into this, all the different edge cases, to simulate them, to model them, to do what we call probabilistic risk assessment behind this, to say like, hey, we might not see this often, but we definitely know that that happens, and let's actually look into this. So you can compare that to launching a rocket, or to look into nuclear safety, right? Like all of those are areas where you really don't want anything to happen, but you have to model what is possible and go and structure your safety case accordingly. So that's the bar we're holding ourselves against. That's what we're actually still working on. If you would come and get a demo right tomorrow, you would say like, well, looks great, right? Like, why can't you launch that? But there's so much more to launching it and to getting it out there. And we do that on the road with safety drivers, but of course, very difficult things we do in simulation, but also on tracks and structured testing, where we can induce a lot of these special cases. And then we work on the platforms as well. And so that's where we have built up a lot of knowledge and experience in what faults can happen on a platform, so that we react the right way to those as well. All of these components together, they make a safety case, the culture as well, the safety culture of the company, and you put them together to really then launch something. We have done that in the Permian in like an industrial setting, and we're making very good progress on that on the highway side.
That's great. Yeah. And I appreciate all of the work that you're putting into the safety case, of course. That's really what it all comes down to at the end of the day. And part of that too is, scaling just isn't just about the vehicle, but also the ecosystem around it, right? You talked a lot about different edge cases and how really anything can happen out on the road. What are some of the operational pieces that need to be put in place to support long haul driverless operations at scale when it comes to sort of the greater environment?
Yeah, that's spot on, because like we said before, it's a technology on the one hand, but really it only matters if it's useful to the customer. So when you think of how do you enable that, there is many more parts that go into this. How do you actually schedule a ride? How do you get the vehicle into driverless autonomy from being human driven? Because usually in a lot of the lots, that the depots, humans do drive those vehicles, and you need to show how do I safely hand this over, and not just use one button that if that button gets triggered at some point on a highway, like you go back to thinking that you're in manual and there's a human, right? There's a lot of these cases where you go and try to really operationalize this. And that also includes working with the right customers upfront, getting their experience, getting their feedback. So we have been working for years now, and still are, with JB Hunt, with Werner Enterprises, and with Martin Brower. So really big carriers in the United States that we drive with, on many of them on a daily basis. And so that gives us good feedback. It tells us what should we aim for, how does our technology need to develop, and what uptime do they want to see. And that is a very important part of the picture. We can see what our truck's doing from our operations center, and help those trucks, of course, on the way as well, like confirming that they have the right load, that they're going in the right to the right other depot. Things like this really needs to be built up, and is something that in our current driverless deployment we do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Now I want to switch gears a little bit, but you've touched on this briefly already. Partnerships have obviously played a really big role in your progress so far. What, in your opinion, makes a strong partnership at this stage of scaling, and how do those relationships really evolve as deployments grow?
Yeah, when you're a small company in the very beginning, then people kind of have to figure out, especially large partners, they have to figure out, well, do I want to work with this company? Is this going anywhere, right? And so that's also where you build up these relationships. You can actually give back a lot to your partners, and giving them feedback, in working with them and collaborating with them. And that's what we have done over the last 8 years. We built some really good partnerships there along the way for various different components. And most recently, that has then led to integrating all of these different components in our in kind of an industry first manufacturing line for driverless trucks that are owned by customers. And that is out in Detroit with Roush, very good partner of ours. And that allows us to actually now fulfill this binding 100 vehicle order over the rest of this year. And it really lets us take all the components, get them to sub manufacturers, sub assembly contractors that basically build these parts up and then integrate them in the vehicle. So a really streamlined manufacturing line going on there at the moment. There's a cool video on our webpage as well if you want to look at that from Roush. But it's super important to build this up, right? These things do not happen over time, and you actually, when you do it, you learn a lot about how that goes. Now, that brought us early this year, we actually announced a partnership with Bosch. That takes us to the next stage where these parts will be even more integrated, right? Like there's lots of components, like you might have seen on our trucks here behind me. We tried to put the sensors into what we call sensor pods, and that allows us to. There's no particular magic to this, right? Our system can have a bar on top as any other vehicle could have. It could have sensors distributed across the vehicle. But what it actually helps to have them in one pod is that it can be built much easier, right? It can be maintained much easier. It can be serviced. You can swap them out and you actually get to a much higher uptime than you usually would. And so that's why we decided on that approach and pushed it forward. And so now when you think of Bosch and sensor pods and like what goes into this is actually where it gets really useful, that you can scale this and can bring in these partners with a global scale, with huge manufacturing background to help you streamline this.
That's really cool. It's interesting to hear about how some of these partnerships have really enabled your scaling to go, that much further. I want to talk more now about building trust. At PAVE, obviously, we talk a lot about building public trust in AVs really as a precursor to widespread deployment. But unlike robotaxis or AV shuttles, the public isn't necessarily going to ride in an autonomous semi-truck. So how important is building trust as a factor when it comes to scaling the AV trucking space?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. Like safety and trust, they're basically one, right? They go together very closely, and it starts with building trust in your own product. So I first need my own team, the wider Kodiak team, to really say like, yeah, I trust this system. I know what's going on. I have seen the data behind this that shows me that this is a safe product to be next to. Our operators every day, right? They walk around the vehicle and the vehicle is driverless. So they do have to build up this trust in the system and to understand how to operate it and what to watch out for. Of course, there's physical limits to anything, right? If you would run in front of a truck that comes at a certain speed, then the truck can brake, but there's physical limits to any particular system. So you do need to then know like, hey, is it, what is this system going to do? And that again goes back to a lot of the verification and validation. And we're looking at a lot of statistics. So even internally, we have to explain, hey, what are we doing here? How does this work? And build up the internal trust. Now, once we have settled that, then of course, it's a lot of trust building with regulators, with law enforcement, and with partners and the general public as well. So that's why we love to be super transparent about what we're doing, how we're doing it, and where the journey is going.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate, what you said about transparency. I think that's one of the really critical components of building trust in the long run. And sort of in the same vein here, oftentimes public skepticism around AV trucking in particular is centered around workforce displacement or job loss. How do you address the workforce question at Kodiak?
Yeah, it's interesting because usually people thought that AI would mostly affect blue collar workers, right? And so now we actually see it's much more white collar as well when we use those tools and in our daily lives, and we actually ask it things that maybe we would actually go to more of a white collar worker to ask. So it's an interesting aspect that it's very hard to predict exactly how these tools do affect our lives. And that said, though, it often is portrayed as like this comes on one day and it basically displaces a lot of people. I do not think that that's the case. I believe that everyone who drives a truck today and wants to drive a truck can actually drive that truck as long as they're in the workforce today. Now, the flip side to this, of course, is like there are not enough people at the moment who want to drive trucks. So for the last decade, we had a driver shortage, and it basically only gets worse every year because we all want our goods delivered to us at home. We order them online and they need to get to us in some form or fashion. And that oftentimes is a truck. So I don't think trucks are going away. And if they get more and more efficient, actually many more things might move to trucks. And that's where the workforce of an AI driver is extremely important and necessary for our society in general.
Yeah, I think you make some really good points. Of course, the driver shortage being one of them. I think there's a huge opportunity for autonomy to sort of fill some of the gaps there. So, appreciate what you said about that. Now, I have one more question for you. It's kind of a big one here. If we fast forward to the end of 2026, what does success look like for Kodiak? What do you think will have changed most in the autonomous trucking landscape as a whole?
Yeah, I would love to already talk about our current numbers of trucks that we have and how we scale this year. But our earnings is only on March 10th. So then we will be able to see a little bit more of what we've been up to in Q4. But in general, in 2026, we are, of course, aiming to fulfill this binding 100 vehicle order from our partner Atlas Energy in the Permian Basin. That's a very important milestone for us. So this is, you could say, this is vertical number one, is industrial trucks. We're of course scaling that vertical as well. And then there's over-the-road trucking. So this is the highway trucks that we have talked about. And this is where we're working very diligently on our safety case. And we do plan to launch in the second half of this year over the road and working with our safety case towards this. We do have what we call the autonomy readiness measure that we're steadily increasing and steadily reporting on. Like we said, like verification and validation is extremely complex, and there's many things that basically need to be wrapped up. But we tried to make it really clear and wrap it into one measure so that people can actually follow along with the progress on that. And finally, of course, there is our defense vertical that we haven't really talked about that much, but our technology is vehicle agnostic, like I said. It is driverless today. And so that, of course, lends itself a lot towards the defense space as well. And we've just had a couple of recent announcements where we engage in new programs to put this together. So all of those we're trying to push forward this year. Very big milestones ahead of us. And it's a super exciting time. I think if I would summarize this, I hope that people start to understand in 2026 even more that this is not something of the future. It's already here, right? We're operating these vehicles 10 at the end of September already. They're in customers' hand. They're driverless 24/7. They run in all kind of weather conditions. And it's super exciting times. And I think during 2026, this will get abundantly clear for people that it is passenger vehicles, it is autonomous trucks, it is autonomy and defense. All of those do come together and are real. And they will get to see it.
Yeah, great points. That's something I'm constantly reminding my friends and family who don't work in the industry is that a lot of these futuristic technologies are already here and already on our roads. So sounds like you've got a really exciting year ahead. Andy, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. For the folks tuning in, we will be posting the full video recording on our YouTube channel and our website later today. So look out for that. Follow us on social media at PAVE Campaign to see it as soon as it's released, or check out our website, pavecampaign.org. And thank you to everybody who attended. We so appreciate your participation, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. It was a pleasure.